Welcome back, bookish people. It is your host, Liz, and this is eReads podcast, the place where I discuss authorship, books, and all things creativity. This episode, Pat Daly joins me, and he shows me how to find inspiration all around. But before we get to that, let me tell you a little bit more about him. Pat Daly is the CEO of Boundary Layer Inc., a company dedicated to improving human performance in high-risk endeavors. He is a polymath, serial entrepreneur, gamer, and author of the Spark Chronicles, a near-future science fiction series. And folks, I have bought the series for my younger brother, and he is enjoying it, so definitely go and check that out. Pat began his professional career as an engineer and Air Force test pilot. After leaving the military, Pat worked at NASA's Johnson Space Center on both the Space Shuttle and International Space Station programs before launching his first company. He has worked globally as a human performance and safety consultant. When not writing or trying to bring new airplane designs to life, Pat can be found gaming. He is a fan of role-playing games, particularly open worlds with engaging storylines where actions have consequences. Pat and his wife live in Houston. They love spending time with their dogs and cats, but most of all, their daughters, son-in-law, and grandchildren. Now that you know about Pat, let's get to this quick ad and we'll jump right into the episode. Hey puzzle people, I am here to tell you about Wongo puzzles. They are 100% wooden puzzles. They'll last forever. Each piece is hand-drawn, so no two pieces are the same, and you'll discover some fun, whimsy pieces as you work through it. They come in a custom wooden box that is perfect for storage and gifting. Some of the designs include animals, some that look like abstract art, buildings, nature. They have whatever you are into, so definitely check them out. With stunning designs and unique shapes, Wongo puzzles are a cut above the rest. I loved doing the snow globe puzzle myself. It was great to pull out a puzzle and be done in a night and not have it on the table for a week. So what are you waiting for? Go to wongopuzzles.com and pick your puzzle today. And be sure to use the promo code ereadspod10 to get 10% off your order. This is the most fun you've had with a puzzle guaranteed or your money back. Go to wongopuzzles.com and use the code ereadspod10. That's ereadspod10 to get 10% off your order and get puzzling right now. So welcome, Pat. I am really excited to have you on to talk about your novels and the creative process. But first, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well today. How about you?
I'm good. Thanks for asking. And now listen, I have a bookish question that I I'll like to find like random questions that pop into my mind around books and the creative process. So I got one for you. Are you ready?
All right. Have at it.
All right. So my question is, what is the best book snack, right? So you're sitting down with a good book. Like, what's the snack situation looking like for you?
Oh, that is a great question. I love it. So for me, the perfect reading snack is a combination of to munch on. I want peanut butter pretzels.
Oh.
And then like a Mountain Dew to drink.
Oh, that seems like really just kind of like, really like just sugary and it has like nice bite to it.
Yep. It feeds me.
Right? And you know, with all like the fiber and like from the peanut butter and the pretzels, you don't have to get up pretty soon from your book. Like you can stay there and munch on that for a while.
That's right. It'll keep you going for hours.
Absolutely. As someone who likes a little bit of bite and a little bit of crunch, I'm absolutely like, if it's not, I like the idea of peanut butter and pretzels, but if not, I'm going to go with like a trail mix, just something that your like hand can go to
Ah,
while one's like
ah.
holding the page.
Yeah, yeah. I like that. Get a little salty, a little sweet going. Yep.
Right. You got it. Well, Pat, tell us a little bit more. So I was, again, really excited. You have an interesting career and so like listeners, as you heard in the bio, right? So Pat started out as an engineer, working at NASA, working for the Air Force, all these things that, right, they require you to have some accuracy, right? You probably need to know exactly where you're going if you're in an airplane.
That helps. Yeah.
Right, it helps a little bit. And so I was really curious as how like you find creativity in some of these spaces where you have to be so exact, and if any of that comes over into the writing process. But before I get into the nitty-gritty of all of that, please tell us a little bit more about Boundary Layer Incorporated.
Yeah, yeah. Happy to do it. I started Boundary Layer about 5 years ago, I guess, as a way to scratch an itch that I felt among some customers. Um, it's really easy to get into the business consulting. Okay,
Right.
just follow all the standard practices and things will all be good. Uh, but that devolves for a lot of companies and a lot of people into okay, we need to write more rules.
Right.
And I think that's approaching it from the wrong end. I think you need to approach it from the people side, where you get the people more engaged, get them more interested in what you're doing and how to do it,
Right.
and then you need fewer rules. So that's where we were going there, and we're kind of addressing the human side of the human machine interface.
I love that. I love that. And where did books come in for you? How did that get started?
I'm a lifelong reader,
Mm.
so I've always loved reading. I've always been a science fiction fan, and I had this dream uh, that I would one day write a novel.
Yeah.
And I wrote some fan fiction when I was younger, and it was gratifying, but it was actually horrific. It was it was terrible writing, and so as as I got closer to my kids being out of the house, I started thinking, maybe now, maybe this is the time.
Mm.
And I actually got the inspiration for the first book because both my daughters were playing a game called Pokemon Go. And I don't know if you're a gamer, I don't know if you're familiar
I
with
know
it.
about Pokemon Go.
All right. So um, I'm walking along one morning, walking the dogs actually, and I got my phone out. So I'm exactly what you don't want to see when you're driving to work, is somebody that's head down, got two dogs in one hand, and paying no attention to what's going on around them. Uh, and I realized that as a Squirtle or something pops up on my screen, that what I am seeing is a completely virtual construct laying over a real background.
Mm.
And that got me thinking, wouldn't it be cool if you could do this on a much larger scale, like a theme park scale? Because I'd played around with um, VR games, virtual reality games,
Hmm.
and they're very limiting because they cut you off completely from everything around you. So, and
Mm.
there's a lot of people have broken televisions because they're swinging their arms and they crash into their TV, or they
Mm.
step on the cat or something like that. So my concept was, what if you could create a blended world, an augmented reality world where you can see and react to the actual physical environment and yet still see and interact with virtual constructs. So that's kind of the genesis behind the book, anyway.
It's really interesting. So you were just kind of like existing, and then you asked this what if question, like, well, what if, right? And just allowed your mind to expand on that. Is that usually how you find inspiration, just kind of like in the world around you? What is your process like?
It is. I'm a big questioner in things, and that's probably the engineer in me. It's
Mm,
like, what if we could do this better? Or what if we could do this differently? Or what if we had a different material we used instead of this? Or as a pilot, it was, what if my engine failed right now? What would I do? Where would I go? And
right.
so I love asking the what if question, and it's turned out to be a great source of creative inspiration for me.
It like that's interesting, right? Because again, kind of these spaces, right? Being an engineer, being a pilot, again, you don't necessarily go to feeling like they're creative spaces, but you have to, like you mentioned, like asking those what if questions. They really seem like they do exist in those spaces. And it's interesting to see, I don't know, like how you blended these two worlds that on paper may not look like they go together.
Yeah, yeah, and really they do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of what ifing in the pilot space, um, and and one of the what if questions is, well, what if? See, I used to be a test pilot, so I would intentionally put airplanes out of control. And the big
Really?
what if there is, yeah, the big what if there is, what if what we think is supposed to work in regaining control of this aircraft
Mm-hmm.
doesn't work? Um, because early in my career, I saw a friend of mine, John Fergione, who put an F-16 out of control deliberately as a test pilot, and then it just didn't want to come back. And so he got to the point where he was supposed to deploy the emergency chute,
Right.
and that didn't work. And so it was like, okay, you're in completely blank space now, John. What are you going to do? Uh, and so he managed to recover the aircraft, but that's his situation has always stuck with me as a, you can't give up, you can't stop thinking just because plan A and plan B didn't work. You need to move on to a plan C.
Okay, question then. So, have you ever encountered that, like in your novel, like a block or something where it felt like you were stuck?
Yes, yes, and you must have too.
Yeah.
Um, and part of my problem, I think, is that I don't outline as much as I should, and I'm
Same.
trying to get better at that.
Not a big outliner either.
Yeah, yeah. So I do get stuck,
Hmm.
and I find I've painted my characters into a corner, and well, what are you going to do now? Um, or or I've inserted a new trauma for them, a new problem,
Right.
and I myself don't know how they're going to solve it.
Hmm.
So I find myself in this situation. Okay, I've got to cut 20 pages here because I can't figure out how to solve this, or I've got to get more creative and come up with a way for them to overcome this obstacle. And what works for me is to sometimes put the writing aside,
Right.
and I also get a lot of processing time when I'm exercising. So I love to run. I love to run on the trails around town. Get away from the cars, get away from mostly other people, someplace where I can think and be safe at the same time. And just as I'm jogging along, I let my mind wander and not even deliberately thinking about the problem.
Yeah.
But then I find that when I get back to the writing, back to the problem, it's like, oh, I could do this or that. So that's kind of the way I deal with that.
I love that. It's kind of like, and I had one of those moments recently where it's just like I couldn't figure out something, right? Like you mentioned, you get into these spaces, it's like, how do I fix this? How do I, I know something's wrong, but how do I get out of it? And it's amazing how just shifting your environment and just allowing your mind to just do what it naturally does, just wander and just kind of be inspired by the world around you can spark so many different things.
Yes. Yes. I love that. So, all right. So you opened up a little bit about yourself that you're not a big outliner either, or planner or plotter.
Yep.
So I've been stalking you online,
Yay.
and I see that I didn't even know that there was a Kindle Vellum thing until I started stalking you,
Yeah.
and you're serializing a novel
Yep.
through that medium. And I got to say that terrifies me. Be- and here's why.
Okay,
I
tell me.
sometimes I get halfway, three-quarters of the way through a manuscript, and I realize, oh, now I got to completely rewrite the first three chapters. And you're you're working without a net there, Liz. You've already published the first chapter, and so how are you dealing with that?
Okay, so in all fairness, it's funny, right? So because I'm always changing and growing, that's actually why I posted on Kindle Vella. So with this platform, so for y'all who don't know about this, I'll give you a brief overview, and if you want to deep dive, go back and listen to season 1 where I talk about Kindle Vella. You'll have so much great information and knowledge there. However, the cliff notes is, so it's a serialized reading platform, and I think it's really good for new writers, or established writers, but I'm going to say mostly new writers because, sometimes you get afraid to share your work, and I was like really afraid. But with Kindle Vella, it felt like it took the fear away, because if you don't like it, you can delete it, you can change it, you can make changes to chapters, you can not make changes, but guess what? When you go and you want to republish it as a book, you can make those changes there. And so it took the fear away. It was like it was okay to play and make mistakes. Where with a novel, you can go and make changes, but it's a little bit harder. It's kind of like it's out there, it's on print. It's, Kindle Vella, it's right now only open to the US, so it's a little bit of a smaller market. And so you get to, again, work out those kinks. So I definitely think it's a really good place to start, especially if you're afraid of like sharing your work, or if you're working through a story and you want to get some feedback. They've instituted something new they're rolling out called polls, where you can kind of like poll people. I think they're also adding comments, because that was a big thing. There's not really a big comment feature. So it's just a really good tool to just gain some confidence, but also possibly grow some readership.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And I apologize. I've been saying vellum, like the material, and it's
Bella.
Vella. So thank you for gently helping me understand that.
You are perfectly fine. You are perfectly fine. But yeah, like, so hopefully, like, listen, I hope to see some of your work on there as well.
I'll try it because I've been thinking about serializing some work, but I was going to do it on my website. But I think via Kindle you'll get access to a much broader audience.
Because I started kind of putting a little bit of it on my website. I mean, I think that's a little bit of a harder draw. I mean, people are already on that machine called Amazon, and, again, it's a little bit easier to market. People are over there. Some of the things people don't like are, you have coins to open episodes, which can get pricey. So it's definitely some nuance to it, and it's definitely it's a definitely interesting machine, but definitely a worthwhile experience.
All right, I'll check it out.
Awesome. Now I have a question for you. So I'm looking at your covers, which are gorgeous. Where did the inspiration for the cover of Spark and Fire come from? And so Spark is book 1, and so Spark is book 1 and Fire is book 2. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And
That's correct.
where did these covers come from? So listeners, they have these awesome colors. It really reads to me like sci-fi, but really edgy. It's just really the colors, the kind of I'll say kind of like cartoonish style of it, or the AI style is really intriguing. How did this happen?
Okay, I am not the artist for sure. I I went through a company called or a website called 99 Designs,
Okay.
and I launched a contest and to create the cover,
Stop
and
it. Really?
yeah, yeah, and the only guidance I gave them a synopsis of the book. I gave them some kind of a color palette
Mm-hmm.
because I already had the website up and I had the colors chosen from that. So they could look at the website for color guidance and then the synopsis of the book and the description of the characters. And I got some great options to choose from. And then once I narrowed it down to Spark was done by uh, a guy named Jesh or a company called Jesh Art Studios, and they had questions. I gave them more feedback, and we kind of honed in on the final cover design. And then for Fire,
Mm-hmm.
I knew I wanted to keep a similar theme
Mm-hmm.
because I want readers to be able to looking at the book to know that it falls into the same universe or it belongs to, it's one of the ones that Pat wrote or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I reached out to the original artist, and they they went non-responsive on me. And so I went back to 99 Designs and I found the artist who I had rated as second,
Mm-hmm.
and I approached them, and it's a company called the Busy D,
Mm-hmm.
and they have been phenomenal. They did the cover for Fire, and then I've got a new novella coming out called Orkland, which is kind of a side adventure in the same universe.
Okay.
And they did that cover. They've designed a T-shirt for me. They've been phenomenal. So yeah, I just kind of crowdsourced it and got great results.
That is so stinking creative. Like, in such a great way to connect with your audience, to do like a contest around the cover design. That I'm so inspired by that. And then just taking that as inspiration. Super cool.
Well, thanks. Thanks. Yeah, I've been very happy with the way it's worked out.
Again, like it blows my mind how, again, looking on paper and thinking that, wow, this is a really hard and fast scientific math kind of world, but how it's so connected and tied to the literature and to the author world.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, how about you? Where do your covers come from?
So my covers come from, so again, I am new at this. So I, avid reader like yourself, right? I think that's kind of
Uh-huh.
a common theme of most writers and authors. And over the pandemic, I started just a friend was like, hey, I'm going to meet with some friends and we're going to write and talk about reading and books and stuff. And that reignited my love of writing, right? So long story short, in doing that, I started playing around with this story called the Prophecy series. And um, on Vela, you will need a cover. And so we're all trying to figure out, because we said we're going to do this together, right? We're all scared. We're like, we're going to do this together. And so we, one of our friends found this company called Get Covers, which you can get really cheap
Ooh.
yeah, just literally get covers, and they'll turn around in about it says 2 days, but sometimes you're waiting about maybe 2 to 5 or 7 days for your cover. But they're really good, they're really great. Again, if you're a new author listening and you're just like, how do I afford all this, Get Covers was a really good alternative. um and you give them an idea, you pick out maybe some stock photos, and that's where it came from. So I'm in the process of tweaking and thinking about how to, what my book cover I want to be. I know my current Vela cover isn't it, But you've given me a really great idea about really just asking the people. I think that's really cool.
Hmm. So you don't like that cover? Because I'm looking at it right now, the cover for Portal, and
So
I think it's really cool.
I love Portal. I feel like Portal really works. My other cover that's not on there is for New Moon, which will actually become the first book. So Portal, I thought for a long time was the first book. And I was going to publish that as an ebook. And then in doing some edits, I was like, no, there's something that comes before this. And so I'm doing my first round of edits on New Moon, which will be the first book. And the cover's cute. It's kind of like that same woman, just bare with the portal behind her. And I'm just like, I think I want a little something more on my book cover. But I love
Mhm.
Portal. Portal, I feel really speaks to the book, but I'm just like, for book one, it needs to go in a little bit of a different direction.
Okay, all right.
Good,
Well,
thank you
note that
for
I'm out there stalking you.
listen, I love it. And listen, I'm so inspired by this conversation and just really reignited to look at the wonder around my world and look and see what are my strengths and from my jobs, just from life, and how can I use that more in my writing? Because again, your journey is really interesting. Your books look amazing. I cannot wait to read them. Um, Tell us a little bit more about Orkland, and yeah, just tell me more about Orkland. So you said this is like a side piece of the same series.
Yeah. It's a novella, and when I was finishing up Fire,
Yeah.
um, I was talking to my editor, and she kept saying, this is too long. You either need to continue this for another 150 pages,
Mm-hmm.
or you're going to need to cut something.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, looking at the schedule, yeah, there's no way I can grind out another 150 pages to get to where I think book 3 will finish up. Um, so she said, I think you need to cut either this piece or this piece.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to.
I know that
I,
feeling.
yeah. I didn't want to cut it because I liked it. And one of the pieces of feedback I got from Spark was that the readers really loved the views into the two protagonists
Yeah.
in Spark. They loved watching them go through some of these quests
Mm-hmm.
and how they approached them, how they thought and felt during all this. And so Spark stands for Solar Prime Augmented Reality Park. It's a
So
Disney
clever.
World sized theme park for augmented reality
Mm-hmm.
games. And so it's broken up into 7 different realms,
Mm-hmm.
if you will. And uh, they follow kind of a rough chronology of human evolution with a little bit of fantasy blended in there. And so I had written this entire quest piece that was going to be in Fire,
Mm-hmm.
and it was going to take place in the realm called Orkland.
Mm-hmm.
And when it came time to cut something, I found that that was probably the best thing for me to cut. And then I ended up with this thing that didn't fit in with the chronology of what's going to be a trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it didn't fit in anymore. And so I thought, well, I really like this.
Yeah.
And some of my beta readers really liked it. And they said, well, why'd you cut that? And I said, well, I had to cut something.
Right.
Uh, so then inspiration struck, and I said, okay, nothing says that your book has to be 350 pages long.
Mm-hmm.
And there are plenty of novellas out there. So why don't I just rework this to make it a novella?
Mm-hmm.
And so I've done that. I'm through all the beta readings. I need to make some final tweaks to the manuscript and then get it through proofreading and copy editing. So it should be out. I'm looking to launch in May, because the one big show I do every year is Comic Palooza in Houston,
Yeah.
and that's May 26th to 28th this year.
Okay.
And so I want to have the book available for fans at that event. So I'm working towards that deadline. But it's a the two main characters, Will and Feral Daughter. That's her avatar name, not her real name. Her real name is Shakri Patel. But the avatar name came from I was on vacation with my two actual daughters, and I was just dog tired, and they were on the Baton Death March of shopping, and so I was hanging out in the street, not wanting to go into yet another shoe store. And they emerged, and I thought I heard one of them say "feral daughter," and I thought that would be a great name for a boutique, for a clothing line, for the rebellious young woman. And I said, "What are you talking about?" And it turned out they weren't saying feral daughter. It was in my fatigued state. They were talking about Carol somebody. And anyway, but that name stuck with me. And so that character is actually kind of a blend of my own two daughters.
Right.
So anyway, Will and Feral end up going on this adventure and hunting for the Easter egg that's hidden within the quest. And because it's in the Orcland realm, they've got to deal with the orcs and problems that have been caused for the orcs by the dwarves mining in the area where the orcs like to hang out. So there's some conflict in there. And then it also pushes a little bit of the romance that's been budding between Will and Feral. So a little bit of romance, a lot of action, and then, of course, some good science-y kind of puzzles thrown in there, too.
Listen, even in your fatigue state, you were able to find the creativity in just again. I appreciate this conversation and the reminder of not to discredit what's around you. You know what I mean? Not to discredit that thought, and to just be open to it. And just, again, thank you for that reminder.
Oh, my pleasure.
Pat, any last words before I ask my final question?
Ooh.
Well, before I ask that, where can people find you? Where can people find the novel?
Okay. The novels are available on Amazon, and they're available both in paperback and in ebook formats. And then to find me, I'm on all the standard socials, but probably the best way to find me and the way to find the Feral Daughters blog is to go to my website, and that's thepatdaily.com.
Fantastic.
So, yeah.
And y'all, if you missed that, it will be in the episode show notes. So please check out Pat and support. I have already added the book to my cart. So Pat, any last words that you want to leave people with? Maybe, anything about those saying like, I'm not creative enough to write a book.
Oh, I think everybody's got a book in them. It's just, what's your pain tolerance is I think the limiting factor, because you have to be willing to suffer through the rewrites.
Oh my God.
Because it's a lot of work, isn't it?
Yes.
And you have to be thick-skinned enough that people can give you honest feedback.
Right.
And I'm not talking about online troll kind of feedback where it's just, you suck, your family sucks, your dog sucks, everybody's an idiot. Mm-hmm. So yeah, let's not do that. But like, this didn't really work for me. I didn't like this character. Hey, we love feedback. Give us comments, give us feedback. Editors are great for giving feedback without caring if they hurt your sensitive little feelings. And so if you have the pain tolerance for going through that, then by all means, unleash that creativity, birth your novel into the world, and let us enjoy it.
Those are such great words and a good place to end, right? Like, someone wants to read what you have. Like, that's an awesome reminder.
Yeah. Yep. We do. Your story is worth sharing.
Yeah.
So let it out.
I love that. And so, Pat, I like to end with inspiration, right? So, like, whether it's, helping people have some spark to cook with, to write their next chapter, to just draw or whatever, just to live life. So my question to you is, if you had to leave us with a word or phrase, something that we can use as a prompt, what would it be?
Ooh, another great question. You're really good at this. You used to have a podcast.
Thank you.
I would say question everything.
Ooh.
Because it's, I'm married to a wonderful woman who loves to cook and rarely follows the recipes. And that leads to wonderful outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's not afraid to experiment. And so just because there's a recipe, or just because there's you have to have 3 acts in your book and then the conclusion, no, question everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because reality may be far different than we actually think.
Again, great words of wisdom and a great prompt. So listeners, if you want to hear what I do with Pat's prompt of question everything, stay tuned to the end of this episode for that reading. Pat, thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Liz. It's been great being on your show. Really appreciate the invite.
Some questions land you in jail, while others get you out. This is the lesson Darla would soon learn as she hung on her mother's dress pocket. Darla was 6 and questioned everything, which landed her in pocket jail. As her pigtails swung from side to side, she looked at her mother. Her mother was not happy. Darla could tell from her sour lemon face. But the little one couldn't hold back the question lingering in her thoughts. Mama, when can I let go of your pocket? Her mother stopped the cart and took something from the shelf. When you learn to keep your hands to yourself, Darla. It was Darla's turn to pout. Darla had removed 2 pairs, one green and one brown, but this was a necessary action. She had to ask the store attendant what kind they were and what kind of tree gives birth to different colored pears. Unfortunately, removing 2 pairs landed 10 more on the floor. After the pear debacle, Darla saw 2 fish, one with clear eyes and another with red eyes. While her mother was completing her order, Darla was sticking her hands inside, trying to conduct her own experiment. The fish incident landed her in pocket jail as they walked down the cereal aisle. The cereal aisle brought more questions. Mama, why is the big people cereal up top and the kids cereal on the bottom? So grown-ups don't have to bend down. Mama, why is the cereal in a square box and not in a round box? They made it that way, her mother grumbles, looking at the back of a box. Mama, yes, why is it called cereal and not Morning Crunchies? Not all cereal is crunchy. Mama, Darla, please, why do you question everything? Her mother was long at the end of her patient stares at her child who rocks on her heels. Darla had another question that her mother could tell. Her mother took a deep sigh and steadied her tone before asking Darla to continue. 1 Just one more question. You can ask more when we get to the freezer aisle. Darla brightened her smile and looked at her mother. Mama, can you learn if you don't ask questions? And that was the question that got Darla out of pocket jail.